stop playing for the audience. Play for you,
Amen.
and your audience is going to see the authenticity in what you're saying and what you're doing. You can't make the audience happy like 100%. We have this misconception with Rotten Tomatoes and your IMDb meter or whatever you're being graded upon. It's really hard to say whether or not your impact is in turn then based upon those metrics.
Anything impactful can only provoke two reactions: either someone is gonna love it or hate it. There isn't in between.
I was in the military, and then everyone came together and they were like, you keep talking about making a film, let's do it. So then I got put on the spot, put your money where your mouth is, and let's make a movie. Let's see what happens when we create this story.
So you really did. You started walking the talk. And that is further than a lot of people, that just to dare and go like, you know what? No, I'm really going to walk the talk.
For me, what was I thinking? I think I was just really thinking like, you have to make something and you have to have people watch it. I think that was really where I was at. So we went to Best Buy, we got the camera, we got some audio equipment, and eventually I got so enthralled with film that we bought this jib that we hooked onto the tripod and to get it to like do a cool craning move. I kind of learned that you have to earn the right of understanding the basics in order to do more advanced things. A word that we use now when I'm working with my teams is this decision arbitrary? And really it comes down to like, are we just doing it to do it? And does it have anything to do with the story or the character? Like if you're going to do a craning shot, there has to be a reason. There's ways of using that narratively to say something to your audience member instead of it just being really cool and fun.
We're so ready for you.
Darn right.
Yes.
Born ready.
Yeah.
Alexander or Alex. May I call you Alex?
Yeah, sure. I just go by Alexander since it helps kind of define more which person you're talking about, and it helps to find my content basically.
Got it. So it's Alexander Raye Pimentel. Is that the way you pronounce your name?
That wasn't too bad. It's close. It's Pimentel.
Pimentel.
Yep.
Got it. Is a Mexican or Spanish name?
Oh, yeah. So my family, from what I understand, originated in Spain and then immigrated to Mexico and then from Mexico to America.
Got it. Okay. Well, you are, amazingly talented director, producer, and writer, or writer, director, producer, the way it is done, obviously. And we had the pleasure of talking to you a little bit before. And you told us so many beautiful stories about you and your path. And we were just like blown away. And we really want to start with the first one. And that would be if you could tell us about your experience with your first stop, motion with your uncle, like the first stop motion experience with your uncle. And like what stayed with you? Technically is obvious, like we know that, but what stayed with you emotionally?
Emotionally, yeah, I really looked up to my uncle. Out of all my family, it's not normal for us to be artists.
Okay.
My grandfather is very big on like working with your hands. He was a mechanic and worked for General Motors for like 35 years. So I was really taught at a young age that I had to be hardworking more in the physical sense than on the art side. But whenever I would go spend time with my uncle, he would basically say that making art and showing how you see the world is important and that is a viable option in life as well. So I always really looked up to him for the simple fact that he was the person making art in my family and stuck to it. I would sketch a lot or try to draw the human figure, and he'd come like for Thanksgiving or holidays that he would be around the family, and he would give me some corrections or ask me to try to draw something a little bit differently. And then I grew up kind of split between my parents were in Georgia, in Atlanta, and my grandparents were still in Los Angeles. And during that time, I think it was tough. So I was often with my grandparents, living with them. So I look at them as, kind of like my parents, really. They taught me a lot about life and, who I should aspire to become. And we relocated back fully, my whole family, around the time I was 10 years old. And when I was there, my uncle had a studio in Los Angeles, and he, I think, talked with my mom and dad and said, let's have him come out for a week. And I was young, so I didn't really know what to expect. He always did cool things like took me to arcade games back in the day when you went and just played on the arcade, and he'd always give me like a bunch of coins to go have a blast and play all the games with me. So I knew he was really into art and comic books like me, and I showed up and he had his whole studio room set up with these lights popped up for the first time. And it was kind of the first time I saw 3-point lighting and lighting set up and then the camera on a tripod. And I was like, what on earth are we gonna do? Like, this is gonna be something cool. He tells me, all right, put your stuff down in the room. We go to Michael's where they have a bunch of craft supplies and we get this like special clay and we found figurines and we came back and we built these like mountains and we painted them and then we used tinfoil to reflect like water. And the whole time I'm really thinking like this feels a lot like a class assignment or something crafty we'd be doing in school. So I'm on board. Obviously I'm a very artsy person, and by the end of it, he's showing me that when we're recording and not recording, we put ripples in the water with the foil, and that never really registered to do something like that to reflect what happens in life and like how water reacts, and then moving the characters around. We even like one of the dinosaurs like ate one of the other dinosaurs, so we had to cut it up and show that the dinosaur was eating it and recording it one step at a time. And there's all these pieces of things everywhere, and we have multiple dinosaurs, and we're using them for different scenes, but it's supposed to be the same character. And I think, yeah, in my mind, what I was really going through was like these telling a story through characterization. Uh, I think even like figurines or like models, I've always been infatuated with the character, specifically like why do they have this design on, or why do they wear this type of backpack or utilize this type of utensil, and what does it say about them ultimately as a character? And
Sorry, even at that young age, because I think you're like, you talked about 10.
yeah, oh yeah.
Even at that age, you had started like dissecting, like really going like, why? Wow.
Oh yeah, really
Interesting.
big on characters specifically. And even to now, you probably say what from then makes its way all the way to now
Mm.
is like for Alano's character in the video game world, he's the video game avatar. I went to the comic book store and I got an action figurine of the comic book version of Blade from the comic. And he's got like the body armor on and this cool sword and the military cargo pants, and really having that around while I'm creating the film puts in my mind who is this person to me.
Mm.
I growing up, a lot of people wonder why I had like action figures or why I was so interested in the character, and I think that's what's always
Mm.
essential to me in the story.
That's
Um,
beautiful.
so yeah,
Interesting.
we build this whole thing and then we're recording, and that's really where I playing video games or watching. I had a Super Nintendo really little, and I think my first editing, honestly, like creating an image was Mario Paint on the Super Nintendo, and you had to go around and you had to use blocks and almost was like an Adobe Illustrator, just really watered down on how you can create images. So,
Interesting.
and that was around 5 years old. So I never really had anyone explain to me how an image is actually coming to me as the viewer. I usually had to ask interesting questions. Like I'd ask my dad questions like, how do people just go on the radio and live their life doing that? And
Mm.
and I think that was like around 8. And he
Mm.
had to explain to me that they have advertisements and there's ways of making funding to get backing to create these talk shows that you hear in the car or play this music that you hear in the car. So I think I was always trying to figure out like I get this media and I'm someone who loves media and stories. My question is how are these people doing it in this day and age? And that was the first time I think without my uncle knowing that he was basically showing me through taking just short clips and having the stop motion one image at a time overall create motion and the character movement and then adding sound. I think that just blew my mind. I realized what animation was, like how they were able to make cartoons or anime that I watched growing up come to life, all the way up to live action of they're recording something. It's all of these frames. In film school later, I realized it's 24 frames a second, and then a soundtrack along with it, whether it be audio or music, and it impacts you. It creates this feeling in me specifically that I get transported to this other story, this other world. I hear people talk about reading books does that for them. For me, it was really anything with motion picture. Yeah, animation, video games. I react with something and there's a sound that comes back. And I think that deep down, I was really interested in how do you do what these people are doing? And a lot of my influences at that time were like, don't even try doing those things. You've got to, be a dentist or, my dad is a manager of major facilities, and I think that everyone really wanted me. I've been a manager before. My family always goes back to just go to managing people and being a team leader, which is a part of being a director and a producer
It
because
is.
True.
you have to bring all of these people together.
Mm.
But there was something about, I don't want to just do that to get, somebody to sell a cool jacket to a customer. I want to find a bunch of great creators and artists to come together to tell a story about characters, right back to that central point of the character means a lot to me. And we chose them to be knights, like little knights. One was silver and one was gold in the figurines. And they go through this journey of getting a jewel that was stolen by this big spider, and they have to go back and trade something trade more jewels to get whatever they wanted from the spider, which I think ultimately, I talk a lot about it now, looking back at such a young age. I mean, that's kind of in Duffel Bag Boy. The fact that he gets out of the military and he's, doing things that are very criminal-esque, and he's really doing it for the idea of money or some sort of payment back, which is like, I think at that really young age was them trying to get that jewel, which represented often things that come up in my films like greed or why, usually when there's a conflict between the characters, it's over something that they're trying to get from one another or something that they're coveting. So yeah, I think all of those ideas really span back from that very first experience making the stop motion film and then watching it for the first time and seeing my family and everybody watching this thing, and they're saying, "Wow, you made this, you created this story with these characters that I interpreted," which is almost like I look at it like Scorsese talks a lot about the visual language, and really what I think that he's saying is how are you communicating to people through images. And I think, later on down the line, I realized that when you're cutting two things together, it starts to create a third image in the audience member's mind. You're kind of filling in the spaces in between cuts and the story. And I think that later on, I realized that when you use it in a certain way, you can create this inner dialogue, this inner vision of what you also see the character going through, and you start to live that experience with them.
Oh, this is a really deep thought. I think that's also maybe going to the point of when we watch a movie and then we recognize ourselves in that movie, even though it's been shot by someone, many years ago. We don't know this person, they don't know us, but it's this universal experience, and maybe it has to do also something with the way how you, as a director, navigate attention of the viewer and kind of pinpoint things. Sometimes even through the montage, through editing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I find it super interesting that I read Godard had this idea like when you watch Breathless. I was really infatuated with the French New Wave when I was young and in the army, and I was reading about it. And he kept saying he wanted to cut out all the boring parts of the conversation.
Yes.
And I was sitting there younger being like, oh, that's crazy. I was like, I want them to talk and I want to, then now when we're creating reels, I really look at it like
That's exactly this.
cut out all the boring stuff and you just get it to the audience member, tell them what you're trying to say.
Get to the point.
And oh
I've
yeah,
just watched. Have you watched the new Wave by I think Richard Linklater? It's
that's right.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've
Oh
just
yeah.
watched it the other week. That's
Oh yeah.
amazing. Yeah,
Definitely a very impactful film through
yes, and there was
history.
exactly this part that I've been talking about where kind of Godard goes back into the editing room and saying, let's just cut all the, everything that is not action. Let's just cut it out.
Yeah.
But a
As
question in between, does this still exist? Does it still the
uh
emotion, stop
oh
emotion experience, like the film that you made with your uncle? I
oh
mean,
yeah.
does it still
My
exist?
my grandfather, he put it on a Blu-ray and then he sent it to me and I was able to pull it off there and save it on my hard drive. So yes, definitely it still exists.
Is there any way for us and the viewers to see it?
Oh gosh, I might be able to send you guys a copy of this. I
Or a
could put
link
it
or
up.
something. Which I'm just putting it out there, just putting it out there. I think that would be fascinating just to, see.
Fair enough. I'm totally game for that.
Cool.
I'll put a note.
Okay, from that experience of creating that viral video that you made with your folks, how did that experience change your relationship with filmmaking when you kind of made that video and then you realized that it reached audiences and people, randomly even shown in a classroom, right? Your
Yes.
film, your video.
Oh yeah.
How was that experience for you?
Gosh, I really look at a lot of what's happened for me and how the industry's changing as I've kind of been involved in a lot of the waves of technology. So like before I joined the army, I really remember everyone peer pressuring me to be on MySpace.
Mm.
And they were like, this is the thing to do. You have to go on there. And then I think I was, gosh, around like 16 or 17 at the time when I created the profile. And I was seeing how other people were using it. And I was thinking to myself, like, what is it that I have to say about myself? And you have to pick like music, a picture of yourself, talk about yourself for the first time. And then going from that to I was in the military, and then everyone came together and they were like, you keep talking about making a film, let's do it. So then I got put on the spot, probably not the last time in my career of put your money where your mouth is and let's make a movie. Let's see what happens when we create this story.
Mm.
And a lot of the things that we were seeing at the time were just comedy. There was like several comedy shows where they show videos of people like slipping on ice or their cat knocked over their coffee. It was a lot of funny videos. And that's really how I remember YouTube at the time. It was just this kind of like new frontier of just a bunch of stuff people thought was interesting. And then when they said let's make something, that was really the only way to get it to a large audience. So if I'm sitting at that time period, I'm saying I have a MySpace, I can create a YouTube. I don't even know if it's a channel. Maybe at the time it's just a login, and then you just
Mm-hmm.
upload stuff. And so they're like, what are we gonna do? I really figured I could get everyone to rally around something funny. In school, it's always fun to laugh or crack jokes, and in the military, in the barracks culture, we're kind of joking around all the time, almost to the point where the sergeants are like, "Be quiet," they don't want to hear it anymore. And so we created the joke of kind of a spin off The Incredible Thug, where instead of he becomes a big green monster, he goes from a nerd to like a street gangster and punks the guy who's kind of trying to punk him. And when it going viral, I at the time, I guess I really just didn't have anything to bounce off of it because I remember the internet being so young. Is
Mhm.
really
Mm.
how I look at it back then. Like, what was I comparing myself to? In all of my books I'm reading, I'm hearing about Scorsese, Jim Jarmusch,
Mm-hmm.
Francis Ford Coppola. All of them really had to utilize this like film festival circuit and this community that they created together in specifically around film school or being in LA. So in my mind, I'm like, I kind of looked at it like I was on the outside, like, I'm none of those things. So, but then at the same time, this new thing that really at the time, I think, 2007, 2008, no one really kind of knew what YouTube was, what it was
Yeah.
capable of,
Yeah.
maybe is how I'd look at it. So then I upload this thing and I have nothing to gauge my viewer count. And then I remember later I get this email from Funny or Die. And I was like, what is it? I go up there and I saw on the top of the website there's this huge beta button. And then it just states basically these videos are competing with each other, which to me
Mhm.
sounded kind of like a film festival, I guess.
Yeah.
But really it was anything, if my son spilt breakfast on me, that could have been funnier than my video and it doesn't get picked. So it's a really interesting time where you're up against anything media related. And, we have come back now to really calling it, we have our buzzwords like media, content,
Mm-hmm.
and we tended to go away from it. YouTube popped off, and then we kind of like created this, I don't even know if we want to say influencer, but a viral video. And I'd say
Mhm.
a viral video is allowed to be almost anything, you know? And so it was really just media and content. And we just kept seeing that on the website once we gave them the link that it just kept winning, that it was on the next week and it was up against another funny video and the next week. And everyone in my unit really rallied behind that. They're like, oh my gosh, it has so many views and people are watching this funny thing. And there's like a funny part at the end, and I like crack a joke, and they were all saying that joke when I go to formation all the time. So I think that was the first time I realized something went viral and it created a branding behind it or a thing behind it, which I think is reoccurring in our new media. Something pops off, we all talk about it. Kind of was creating that really early culture. For me, yeah, what was I thinking? I think I was just really thinking like, you have to make something and you have to have people watch it. I think that was really where I was at. And then going all the way down to Fort Gordon, Georgia, states and states away from where I'm stationed. And I'm sitting there and really it's kind of dreary. I have to learn how to scan items back into their locations in the warehouse with this new digital scanner. And I'm trying to pass the test so that way, I'm still proficient at my army job. And it's kind of like homework.
Mhm.
And and so I'm sitting there, and this guy is like, "I'm gonna play an icebreaker," and it's us, my unit. And there's like two of us in the room, and there's like maybe like 60 people, and they watch it, and everyone. It's kind of like being an imposter in your own screening. No one knows you're really there. So I'm sitting there, and the people are chuckling and laughing and making fun of them and saying what the joke was, and he even said like I think there's some privates in the army, and they're like, gosh, these goofy privates these days, they'll do anything. And I'm almost to the point where I don't really want to say anything because maybe some of these sergeants and higher ranking people in there will be like, I'm the kind of the goofy private that you're talking about. And so I waited until everyone left for a break, and I went and spoke to the instructor, and he kind of felt bad, like, should I not do this anymore? And yeah, to what you guys are describing, I guess I was having to sort through all of the emotion of like, what do you do now that your content is available
Mm.
Mhm.
and people can talk about it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't think that wasn't even in my mindset. It was more of like, really, the only thing I can think of when I think about that first short film is I messed up the 180-degree line when I was cutting between cameras.
I love
So
it.
I watch
Of
it and
course. Of course.
I'm like, ah, what an amateur. Like, what was this guy doing?
Oh.
He cut that way and this way, and it doesn't make any sense. So I'm stuck. I had this book called Shot by Shot, and I read
I
Mm-hmm.
it
love this
cover to
Well
book.
cover.
known. Well known.
So I'm thinking one of the first things in the book I already messed up. I didn't use the 180-degree line,
Accessorial.
and yes. I'm over here thinking about if some filmmaker sees this, they're going to be like, gosh, what's wrong with this guy? And then they're over here like, forget your technical aspects. We're giggling about whatever it is you put up on frame and what the message was.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
so then we came back and yeah, I didn't make anything for a while. And everyone was a little shocked that they're like, you have a hit, you have to do something else.
Mm, of
And
course.
especially because I got all of them involved. They're like, throw me in the movie. I want to be the famous guy that everyone talks about. So then I'm over here like, wow, I have pressure to keep doing it, which is,
Yeah.
a rare place for a filmmaker. But now I have to consider how do I feel about what I'm doing and the impact and what people will say. So Uh, I remember being out. They had where you have to like block the roads, and you wear like a reflective vest, and everyone can run by, and you get selected for it. And in Fort Drum, it's really cold, so you have to be out there like a half an hour before everybody. It's early in the morning. It's freezing up in
Mm.
Fort Drum. It's like negative 10 degrees out there. And a guy tells me a story about, I didn't know at the time, he couldn't put the name to it, but it was Jack London's To Build a Fire.
Mm.
And we got on the topic about, I pointed out into the trees and I was like, could you survive out there and for how long? And he was like, I don't think you can survive very long in this negative degree weather, and it would be quite a fight with nature. And then I had this idea of like, I like that idea. I like a drama around that.
Mm.
And I rewrote To Build a Fire to be probably not for the first time. I've done this a few times with older stories, to be a modern setting of a character going through the same problem. And we just called it Build a Fire.
Mm.
And
Is
and then
this
I
the
submitted it.
time? I'm sorry. Is this the time where you were in New York, in the Film Academy, New York Film Academy in LA, where you started? Or is this before?
So yeah, it's really weird for me as a filmmaker. I just started doing these things while I was still in the army.
Mm.
Oh, please continue telling. So sorry. I was like, I thought maybe. So you
No,
started,
yeah.
so this film was this short, so the first one we know, and this one was also when you were in the army and you were just making,
Yep.
wow.
I figured like I have to try to even. My mom told me to just forget about it. She was like, don't go to film school. This
Mm.
is a wild expectation." My
Mm,
dad definitely was like, "No, you need to use." Yeah, he's like, "You need to use your GI Bill and go find a good career path and all these
yeah.
things." And I think it's good. It's not a bad thing to tell me to think realistically, but at the same time, there was something in me that was like, why does everyone tell me about this one thing that I like to do, that it's so bad? And it's
Yeah.
such a, don't go do this thing. So I think there was a little bit of that rebelliousness in me of like, well, I don't know why everyone keeps telling me not to do this, but I want to do this.
I'm gonna do it.
Exactly. So then, yeah, I went straight to Barnes and Noble. I picked up To Build a Fire, and it had both of his versions in the early 1900s, and I just rewrote it into a script. And then we went around the Watertown area up there by Fort Drum, New York, and it's good 2, 3 feet of snow, and it's
Mm,
in the negatives. And
Mm.
so I was like, it's cold, just like the story. We might as well just use our environment to our advantage. And I submitted it at the time. It's like I said, it's really interesting because the whole industry just continues to evolve. And back then, you used Without a Box. I want to say that was like, I don't even know if IMDb had, maybe IMDb owned it or something like that, but it was the only way to really submit to film festivals if you were a little person.
mm,
Mm.
I signed up. You had to print out each film festival's like paper that you're submitting and pay online. You have to burn your Blu-ray. So I had to do all these wild things to get it physically, and then you ship it to them in the mail. And then the one that I applied for was New York International Film and Video Festival because we were up there, and then Barcelona Spain's Film Festival, and it got accepted to both.
wow.
And I was shocked. You go on this website and it's so impersonal. You print out all these documents. I send it away. I don't hear for like a while. And then you get this piece of mail back and you're like, you got accepted. And so
Wow.
I put in leave from the army and I got to go down to New York for New York International Film Festival. And then Spain, I couldn't go all the way to Spain, but it was cool to see that where my family is from, that it worked out that I told a story and my heritage was interested in what I had to say. That
Mm,
felt really good that it did well in Spain particularly.
mm,
And so I guess at that point I really sat down. It was after my unit had gone to war. I'm having to figure out what I have to do now that I'm about to leave the military, and everyone's telling me to go be a dentist, basically. And my dad wanted me to. I applied to go to law school in Orange County in LA, and I got accepted. So I'm like, am I going to be a lawyer? Am I going to be a dentist? These things just didn't feel right, deep down
yeah.
inside. And so I had got accepted to New York Film Academy and NYU. And if you know about Scorsese, NYU is where he was, is where Spike Lee was. So I really was like, that's where I have to go. My hero went there.
Mm,
I have
I
to go
have to
there.
go there.
And coincidentally, my uncle, I don't know what he was going through in New York at the time because he moved from LA to New York, but he was like, I can't really uh, have you bunk here before you start classes. So I tried a bunch of things that a young guy would do with whatever resources I could from my post in the military, but I couldn't sort it out other than at New York Film Academy, I knew all the areas. I had someone who let me stay during Christmas before I could go start school in January in 2012. So I was like, I have to go to film school. That's what I figured was the best option. So I got out of the military, took off back to LA and started my journey there in film school. And yeah, everything from there kind of exploded in terms of now I'm where the industry is.
Yeah, of
Uh,
course. Yeah.
Now we've gone
You
from
did a
MySpace.
filmmaking program, like 1 year filmmaking program, right?
Mm.
I did a bachelor's degree for film.
Oh, bachelor's degree.
May I
Yeah.
ask you around this? So, how many films, short films, have you done? Like, had you, produced, written, filmed before you started? And then I know you
Gosh.
made a bunch when you were there. So
Oh
this is like
yeah.
a two-part question. First of all, like
Oh
how
yeah.
many in total are they? And
Gosh, I'd say
what did it what did this repetition teach you that, no books, no class could teach you?
wow. At first it kind of felt like yeah, I'm kind of self-teaching myself, and I think I probably started my first habits where when I worked at IKEA, they had this really cool. I was a manager of their recovery tar department. There's like 36 people, and I had two leaders reporting to me, and I really had to be very strategic on what I'm asking them to do.
Mm.
And they, for the first time, put it in words for me to start, stop, and continue. And I'd get in the room with my leadership team and I'd say, what are our starts? What are our stops? And what do we want to continue? And I think for me, it really spoke to me because I kind of did that for myself early on with film, particularly. I couldn't turn to Francis Ford Coppola or go hang out with Brian De Palma and be like, really, tell me what you didn't like, or that was just not going to happen. So I had to ask myself, how do I think I did? And I basically, instead of just harping on the negatives, which I knew there was a ton, I'm breaking the 180 degree, don't ever do that again. How do you make your dialogue more compelling? Things like that. I was saying, I think this went well. I don't think these things went well. And we got to keep up, getting good talent, having a good story. And I was kind of giving myself those things to think about. And um, when I was in the army, I made about, I say about 7 films while I
Wow.
was in, yeah.
Oh,
And they're kind of hidden on a hard drive because they're like, the saying, filmmakers' first work is kind of their goofy stuff. But, and it was really adolescent. I was definitely talking about, one of them was a funny drunk night in the barracks. And, for a young guy going from 17 to 21 in the army, they're all alcohol's a big influence, and you see your friends making mistakes and getting in trouble or losing their rank. So that was the culture. And everyone thought it was hilarious that I basically just made a short film kind of highlighting what a weekend is like in the barracks. But once again, it was funny. It was a comedy, and everyone kept peer pressuring me of like, we want more of this. And I'm
what
kind of
kind of
great.
camera did you shoot with? Sorry,
Yeah,
interrupted.
Oh,
good
that
question.
that's uh that's really funny. We went straight to Best Buy and we just got a Sony camcorder, a digital one.
Okay.
And then I taped a cotton ball to the top where the microphone was, so the wind wasn't messing up the
Mm,
dialogue.
okay. Very good.
And
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 we're
how well, we have to ask more about this because this is interesting. Like, how did you do it around like budgeting or stuff? Like, did you have any budget for it or?
gosh, I just like saved up, at the time financially I was more like, what video game am I going to get this weekend when I get paid in the army? Or I didn't really have priorities set up that way, if you want me to be
Mm.
honest. I was
Mm.
just kind of like a kid, and Uncle Sam was teaching me, well, what do other people do and what not to do. So we went to Best Buy, we got the camera, we got some audio equipment, and eventually I got so enthralled with film that we bought this jib that we hooked onto the tripod, and we were trying to do these. We're out there in the snow with weights on this thing, trying to get it to like do a cool craning
Mm.
move. And kind of to your question of like, what did you learn? I kind of learned that you have to earn the right of understanding the basics in
Mm.
order to do more advanced things.
Mm.
Uh, we used a wheelchair, and I tried to do the Hitchcock shot with the zoom and the track, and really all of
I
that
did
comes from
that
like,
too.
yeah, how do you do it? How did he do that? How did he make it feel like that? And then you start to realize, a word that we use now when I'm working with my teams is this decision arbitrary? And really,
Mm.
it comes down to like, are we just doing it to do it? And does it
Mm.
have anything to do with the story or the character? But back then, there wasn't anyone telling me that my decisions were arbitrary. I was like, we're doing a track zoom, and then there's this craning shot onto the building, and then the guy walks in and she starts yelling. And it was
Mm.
really just kind of very basic filmmaking of like, here's this drama,
Mm.
here's what I've seen other filmmakers do.
Mm.
And you kind of learn, yeah, honestly, I tell people a lot of things. Like, I kind of learned that like, if you're going to do a craning shot, there has to be a reason. There's
Yeah.
ways of using that narratively to say something to your audience member instead of it just being really cool and fun. And I started to learn that like, although my urge is to go do that when I'm looking at the story, maybe sometimes I try to pull back now and say, what is a clever way of showing it? And
Mm.
I think that's an easier way of being more original, I'd say.
Mm.
Even with my team, I'm not really big on shots, is what my team will probably tell all of you. I'm really big on the idea. So if the
Mm.
character's going through something, I usually say, what's a clever way we could show this beat or what this character's going through? And the team will be like, oh, well, if you put it right up close to him and he says this, and then all of a sudden we're being a lot more creative, and we're starting to think outside the box instead of saying, just solve it with that nice dolly over there and just
Mm.
push in on them. Let's light it for 4 hours. Let's try it 8 times, and then we'll walk away feeling like we got a really pretty thing. And I kind of realized that like 4 hours on something really pretty versus what we could have gotten in 4 hours. Sometimes I have to weigh what was the right decision there, as basically as a producer, as a coach.
Mm.
And then I started to realize that like, don't do those sort of things, if you don't need to. And in film school, I think that was really an upper hand because I realized I had made a lot of these super, you know, early mistakes of just, it's okay. I also don't want to make it sound like don't do it.
Also, they
It's,
were fun, right?
yeah, because, you're
That's the
opening
main
this
part of it.
box.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're opening this box of all these incredible things of what is cinema,
Mm.
and you start to learn like, what do you appreciate out of it, or how did it work in your style. So when I was given projects in film school, gosh, I made about, I'd say, probably about 13 short films while I was in film school.
Of course you did.
Mm. Plus
You made
7
so
from the
many.
army.
Yes.
It's already a list of filmography. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love it.
And we made them for very cheap. I would save my money of whatever I wasn't spending on rent or
Mm.
on whatever else the world I was doing at the time.
Food.
And food, yeah. Oh yeah, especially in college. And start using those things for like a new lens or a camera. And everyone was really harsh too. Like, I think that's something to be said about what my experience was like making short films. I heard over and over again this concept from teachers. They'd kind of make fun of me, honestly, and haze me a little bit about you should only spend like $30,000 on a 30-minute film. And I would be in class and I'd think about that. I feel kind of a little bit attacked because I know sometimes they're talking about me and my like low budget, crazy 13 movies that I'm making. And I thought about it like, if I tried to go get the red camera, which is $40,000, I don't,
Mm.
there's, or even try to rent it, I have no way of getting
Mm.
financial backing for things like this. And I saw other kids using GoFundMe or whatever was big at that time. that was a big thing in film school too. Is like use this funding campaign on this website to get finances. I saw everyone doing that, and some people would do it successful if they had good connections, and those who were kind of like me, where my family immigrated here, that I can't call my grandfather and ask for something like that. I had to find a different means of doing it, and it was really hard to tell the kid who went to Best Buy and got a camcorder that this DSLR is not good enough. And I'm like, what? This thing looks way better than the camcorder. So I was like, it's good enough for me. We're making something with it.
I'm
So
using it. Gosh.
So many
I
things to unpack with you.
oh
First of
yeah.
all, going back to New York Film Academy, it's also my alma mater, though I
Oh
studied in
wow.
Florence and it's just for 3 months, but it was an amazing experience. They definitely changed my life, the way how
Yeah.
they do things and what they teach you.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
And also about all of those creative ways of shooting. I remember shooting with one guy. He was from my course, Alan. Big shout out to you. And he just
Thank you.
wanted to try this shot. He just wanted to throw the camera. We had Sony FX6, like really heavy camera,
Wow.
through the window, like by the cord. Like he wanted to have like this long shot, and we all were like kind of like, yes, yes, let's do it. Only 3 days of shooting, and we're like all running high on coffee and sleep deprivation, but sure, like why not 6 hours of doing this shot? And it
Oh
never made the
yeah.
final cut, but we had a blast shooting this. I wanted to ask you about, you told us a really interesting thing about Kurt Wimmer, who came into your life and kind of proposed a challenge to you in a way, kind of
Yeah.
challenged your way of seeing things in a
Oh yeah.
bit, right? So, what was this story? Tell us, please, in your own words.
Gosh, we had so there were we were really big in at the time of going to go see people speak, and a lot of the group of people that I was making films with, they were really interested to go do this as well.
Mm.
So if any of us heard of a talk or a way of seeing somebody who does something in the industry, we would go to it. Like we went to go see the cinematographer of Inception, and we got to watch a screening, and then he got to speak about what it was like working with Christopher Nolan and how he worked through the challenges.
I
And we got
love
to
that
watch
film. Oh,
a
sorry. I
film.
just have to say it. I love that. I
Oh
love
yeah.
that film so much. I'm so sorry.
Oh yeah.
Seen it so
Oh
many
yeah.
times.
Me
Yeah.
too. And that was the first time I ever watched it in theater on a film print because
Wow.
Oh,
everything's so digital.
Yeah.
And then there was Spielberg came and it was packed to go watch. Yeah, I was like way in the back, but I thought it was totally worth it.
Yes.
And I just want to hear him talk, you know. And there was a screening where Kurt Wimmer showed a film print of Equilibrium, and so
Mm.
I'm there like a kid in a candy shop. I love this movie growing up. And then he spoke a little bit, and then like a week later, someone was like, "Hey, he's going to the American Legion on Hollywood Boulevard." And we had just been there to listen to the COO of Universal Studios Backlot talk about how he was a Marine and how he got out and how he utilized his skills to basically be a production manager, which, multiple shoots at one time. At the time, I was used to being around sergeant majors and stuff, so I'm like, oh yeah, that's tough. But thinking back, like that job is so difficult to
Mm.
run all of those things and have that mindset. So, getting to listen to him. So, since we had already been there, I was like, let's go to the American Legion and see him again. So, he gave a very similar talk as he gave last time. And something that I utilize in my work now is he said that when you write the first act, it's like a mountain. And
mm,
if you know your third act and your conclusion, it's the other mountain. And you just walk your character up to the peak in the first act and they look over at it. Then they have to go down into the forest and do a bunch of stuff to go climb back up to that wherever it is that
Right.
they're trying to go. And that made screenwriting to me very simple, you
mm,
know. And so I've always looked at it in that way. And afterwards, they were basically like, "Oh, he's going to go over into the bar area at the American Legion, and you can just go talk to him." And I'm like, "Oh, this is my moment." I'm definitely going to go talk to him. So we all, get up and everyone's talking. We go in there, everyone's getting their beer. I'm not getting a beer. I'm focused. I'm like in line. I'm like, there's a line of like 15 people to get to this guy. I'm waiting. So I
oh,
waited and got all the way up there. And yeah, I just had this confidence in me of that really I think it's the type of film that I wanted to make. So
Mm.
I was really focused on understanding how to do that.
Mm.
And my teacher was using Save the Cat, which the writing for me was hard. I couldn't fit my beats entirely of my stories in that way. And I really struggled to write in a way that I was comfortable and get a decent grade,
Mm.
honestly, from a teacher who just was like, just write Save the Cat. And that's what they told me over and over again.
Mm.
And so I went up to him and I'm like, hey, my teacher's doing this to me. Do you have any advice? I don't really want to write like Save the Cat. I don't write stuff that way. And he's like, well, what would you write? And I'm like, I write like, I write like Paul Schrader. I write like Scorsese. I make these character pieces that are they're tragedies, and I'm all passionate. And I watched him take it all in. There's this kid from film school telling him that he doesn't like his screenwriting teacher, and he basically was like, he's basically like, how do I know you do any of these things? Yeah, I
Mm.
kind of feel like looking back now, he's in his teacher's seat. How does the teacher know that you do any of this stuff? How does any of us know? And
Mm.
that's what he kind of, like you said, he kind of challenged me. He says, how does any of us know that you write like that or direct like that? And if no one knows that, who are you to tell anyone the way you should be taught or trained how to do the work? And then he just turned and continued a conversation with somebody else. So then I walk away and I go sit down by myself, and there's all these people in the bar. My buddy's occupied with something else, and I'm just stuck in my mind about it, about what he told me. And that night while I was laying there, I discerned basically that, as a person, he wasn't telling me these things to be mean. Like, I don't really know what you can get out of that, telling some film student, like, just do that. Like, I just don't feel like that was what was happening. So I thought through it and I came to realize that I think he was telling me that I had to prove that I make a certain type of film or make a certain type of content, media.
Mm.
And that's when I just kind of like the next morning, I was on a mission. Everything that the Army taught me, I was like, all right, here's our mission, here's our op order, here's how we get there, here's the things that we need. And I called over a bunch of people, and they all basically told me that we've been liking these stories that you've been talking about. So then instantly I was like, no more talking about it. They're greenlit. That one's greenlit. This one's greenlit. and
Well, we
and
see that it really, I mean, we have two of your film posters behind you.
yeah,
I
that's
Call
true. Yeah.
First and Down
Yes.
the
Yep.
River. And I
Downriver. Yeah.
mean, so you really did. You started walking the talk. You weren't just like, you know, and
Right.
that is further than a lot of people that just to dare and go like, you know what? No, I'm really gonna walk the talk. And I would really want to talk to you about Down the River because I think that feature film of yours, you talked about it. You were in the army. You didn't want to make like a war film and anything. But then it spoke to you. This is what was meant to come and
Yeah.
be born. And then this story like
Mhm.
sparked very strong reactions,
Yes.
and including hostility, unfortunately, which can
Yeah, you're
happen
right.
when you're, making art. So, what did that experience teach you about standing inside the truth as your own truth as an artist? Because it's not easy. So,
Yeah, like there's a lot of negative reviews around Don River online, and but there's also positive ones. So it kind of reminded me like back to that early YouTube phase when I made The Incredible Thug. I had done I used a laundry basket, and back to what we're saying with our film school days of I did like a tracking shot, and the wheels are bad, it's the wrong floor, and the tracking shot's not great, and I got made fun of a lot in the comments for it. And I felt really bad at the time that like people said that about me trying to learn. And I think after I sorted through it, I told myself like, what else am I going to do? If I'm going to make a tracking shot, I'm probably going to mess it up 30 times out of
Mhm.
out of 31. And then there's one good tracking shot, and everyone's like, there you go, you got it finally.
got it.
So yeah, I back then I realized that people were going to say bad things. They were doing it on my MySpace, so I put the movies out, the short films on YouTube. So I've
Mm.
always had this. I've always had an audience backlash. I probably almost say all the way up almost every time. I'll have really negative feedback and I'll have really positive feedback. And I don't ever really, I kind of prepare myself knowing that there's not really that middle ground.
Yeah,
And
okay.
yeah, I kind of look at it like if I'm going to go spray paint something on the wall, you're either going to walk by and tell me like lame, or you're
Mm-hmm.
going to walk by and be like, oh, that reminds me of, that's usually what I get from a film of like, that reminds me of what it was like for me being in the military, or that reminds me of this funny thing I saw there, or somehow it connected with that person in their life and what it's like to have a human story. And so I with Downriver, yeah, gosh, I didn't really know what to expect. Uh, I we screened it in the movie theater. That's what's kind of like me and a bunch of folks at the time wanted to do to make it was kind of like a celebration. I go into debt making the movies basically, and they're like, go spend another $3,000 to get a movie theater. And I'm like, oh, we went through the whole thing already. Why don't we just celebrate it? So I spent more money on it. And everyone had such interesting reactions. One of my buddies, who I kind of mentored and helped go to joining the Navy,
Mm.
his family was there, and then one of the actors in the film, he was infantry in the Army and had similar experiences to me. And at the end of the film, his mom stood up, his mother was crying and said, he doesn't talk about what happened. And this gave me a better insight of what life must be like for you guys.
Wow.
And everyone was quiet. So it was weird because that was one good piece of feedback. And then a lot of people started to stand up after someone said something and they're like, well, the uniforms, we don't like that they're red. And, that was a big point of contention with my buddy Nick, who's the production designer. He said that he wanted it to look like they were basically covered in blood
Yeah.
because, that's what you're paying when you go to war, you pay in blood. And so
Mm.
we picked maroon for a reason and we're getting made fun of. They're like, it looks pink. Why are they wearing those pink things over there? And I noticed people had such a reaction to design and the characters, and really we never making it. It was more about like we're talking about like there's skeletons and there's death involved in war. So red was naturally a color that we went to, especially maroon because that's the color of blood dried. That's really what
Mm.
putting your film school hat on. That's really where we're at. We're just thinking more like it's artsy,
Mm.
And then you give it to people, you give it to the audience, and they're like, forget artsy, it's pink, and they look like a bunch of idiots playing airsoft guns, and they're a bunch of young kids. That's a piece of feedback that I always think is interesting. Is they say that we're all just kids in the film, and I'm like,
Mm.
this is after war, so like. My son was born around this period, so I'm like I'm a father. I'm not necessarily a kid myself anymore,
Mm.
and that's really weird feedback. So that furthers the idea of the film being so impactful to me of like, do we really know that we're sending children to go to war? And like, is that even publicly known? Or do we
Mm.
really only think it's a general that looks like Gary Oldman and a sergeant that looks like Chris Hemsworth? And then, the truth is, no, I really didn't report to a sergeant major that looks like Gary Oldman, and my NCO was not Chris Hemsworth. It was a guy who lived a difficult life just like me, came from
Mm.
harsh means, and they were really trying to make sure that you weren't ate up all the time, that you weren't messing up and showing up with the wrong stuff on. And it's really trying to figure out how to live through this experience with other people. And uh, I think that's really what the film was for us at the end of the day. That's kind of what I took away from Fear and Desire, the original, all the way to Downriver, was this idea of it's really a canvas of war, and that it has the freedom not to say that it was a certain war or stuck in a certain time period, but talk about war as a topic in general. And
Mm.
I think that's what I gravitated towards in terms of making the film,
Yeah.
and then ultimately standing my ground with all the crazy feedback from people. I had death threats and saying that I insulted their service.
Mm.
Like they told me that you should be dis. I had some message saying you should feel dishonored that you served in the United States military and made this kind of film and talked about our service this way. And I had to sit there and read that and be like, wow, like do I feel like I dishonored my service by telling the story?
Mm.
And I had to like think through whether I believe that's true. And at the end, I would respond and be like, I don't feel like I did anything wrong. I don't feel like I'm not saying that I'm proud of what I did to serve my country, but I am talking about what is the point of all this and why do we do it?
Yeah.
And I think that that's as fair of a topic as anything, really. And so I think really was I've come to terms with you can't make the audience happy, like 100%
Yeah.
happy all the time. We have this misconception with Rotten Tomatoes and your IMDb meter or whatever your follower account, whatever you're being graded upon.
Mm.
It's really hard to say whether or not your impact is in turn then based upon those metrics because I often say this all the time. I'll watch something, and if I liked it, I don't say anything.
Yeah,
Hmm.
right.
True.
But more often than not, are you kind of put in this call to action to be like, I got to talk about what I didn't like about it
Mm.
in anything really, in criticism. So to me, I'm like, you're going to get way more feedback on what people don't like versus what they did like because if in a sense I feel like if the viewer was happy, them watching and walking away with it is probably there's your gold star. You did it.
Exactly. And I
Right?
mean, you did also get positive feedback. Like, let's put it out there a lot. Like, this
Yeah.
is not the only thing. Like, people really appreciated it, and it is popular, and which is beautiful.
Right. Yeah. And I think that goes back to that central idea of we do want to have that discussion as a collective, as people,
Yeah,
about war and whether war is okay, you
yeah,
know, at the end of the day.
that
And I
is true.
mean, anything impactful can only provoke two reactions. Either someone is going to love it or hate it. There isn't in between. If you are in
So true.
between, then you're trying to please someone, the audience, or to over explain, and they won't be pleased anyway because they will feel
It's
that you are manipulating them. So,
it's
Yeah,
so true.
yeah.
that is
Now,
true.
now I get coached a lot. I was hanging out with this musician and I was talking a lot about that I get talked to a lot about being financially successful, whether my films are financially successful or
Mm.
not. Another metric that you're held to, and his advice was stop playing for the audience. Play for you,
Amen.
and your audience is going to see the authenticity in what you're saying and what you're doing, and that's going to be more interesting and attractive than trying to be like, all right, I have the perfect, you know, recipe of things that's going to make you super happy, when in reality, that's almost asking to create a concoction of things that's almost impossible. You're not going to make everybody happy. So,
No, you're not. That is
Right.
true.
Um, on that point, we touched briefly upon you making films on micro budgets or, something that it's probably a lot of people think is impossible to make films. Um, what do you think it gives artists creatively when you have like constriction of that sort that you have a micro budget? Do you think it push you creatively or rather creates constraints or maybe both?
yeah, that's a great question. I feel like, yeah, you're put under constraints, and I like the idea of. I always tell my teams we got to be clever, really,
Mm.
because at the end of the day, if everyone agrees that we want this really cool drone shot or from a helicopter, we have basically what I usually ask the team is like, what is the shot saying? And if they're saying is here's an exterior and we're setting up the environment before we're going into the scene, I try to ask some ways with what we have now, what are some ways that we can still do that to tell the audience the same piece of information? And what you kind of find is you start getting creative. You start thinking about things that you kind of never really seen before, like, ooh, what if, or using not something that we haven't really seen before, but utilizing a technique and doing it in a way that's not usual. Like, Hitchcock's really known on starting on close and then popping
Mm.
back out to start a scene. So at
Mhm.
first you're questioning what is that, and then he reveals stuff to you, which is always really exciting. So then you start thinking about utilizing techniques that are a little bit more clever, some way of showing you this information. And I hear too often that everyone thinks that having a low budget means that it's not going to be good.
Mm.
And I think really that comes down to, I mean, there's all kinds of proof all over the internet that that's not true. Like
Right.
my son will watch a YouTube video of like, you know, someone in their backyard having a Nerf gun fight, and to him, that's cooler than the thing that's on Disney Plus. You know,
Yeah.
his attention's there, not on all the stuff that's on there. So really, it comes down to your message and the heart of the film, and you know, I also think that the team asked that of me, particularly of I get on the calls when I'm recruiting, and they'll say, "Why are you telling this story?" Or whatever problems they may have had with the story, they'll say, "Why? Why is it like that?" And if you don't have an answer, if you're basically like, well, it's cool because it's supposed to be like a spin-off of a new type of the Matrix movie or a Star Wars in for the new generation, that's not really an answer that they're looking for. They're like, why is this character going through that? How is it realistic? And I often try to ground my films in like a contemporary sense. It's whether even if it's sci-fi, it's about food. They're struggling for food, or it's about having to travel from one point to another, or it's about losing someone. And I think that those ideas are so central to the human condition
Mm.
that if you build something around that, we're already going to be involved in the heart of it. That you tend to like you tend to let go some of the other things that you're seeing on frame. And you know, if you're first starting out, there's no way you're not gonna hit a 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 across the board. You know, there's this little diagram that I show everyone, and it basically has fast, good, and cheap. And it
Mhm.
keeps playing. If you push fast, you know, it's not cheap. If you push cheap, it's not good. So basically there's no way you're going to get all three to click for you. So basically you have to hone in on the things that make you know, at the end of the day. And that's like, yeah, obviously as a very young person, I was really into the characters. What are they wearing? Why are they wearing it? Who are they? What do they stand for? When I look at this person, what is the backstory? What led them to be this person today?
Mm.
And I really gravitate towards that idea, and the story I think comes out of that. And it's kind of a journey with these people of what they would experience. And I try to look at it really realistically. You know, it's hard for me to not often will you see me write a scene or work with a team on a scene about like trying to deconstruct a bomb. Because in
Mm.
reality, I've never done that, and I have no idea what the room's going to be doing. You know, maybe later in my career, if I have someone on set who's an EOD in the military and someone who's been in that type of situation, and they're having a conversation with us, setting us up for this is what this scene is, what happens in this scenario,
Mm.
then I'll get down on the nitty gritty of like, yeah, you're stressed out. That's horrible. What are you thinking about? And then I think
Mhm.
a scene can actually come from that, starting to understand what's going on with the people. But on a micro budget level, I usually get a spark of something like this particular film now for virtual reality. I was in between retail making all my crazy films and being like, I got to do something to take care of my family and my son while I'm doing all these things.
Mm.
And someone reached out to me and said that they were going to create this VR experience store where people go in and they wanted to use my retail experience to get people to buy the experience. And what got me was I was like, I've sold shoes, I've sold socks, I've sold clothing, I've sold furniture, I've sold electronics. I've never sold an experience. So I was quite interested in that idea. But really, what that experience had nothing to do with that. I found out I was a good salesperson as always. But
Mm.
what I did find out is what is this new weird technology that I'm trying to sell to people? I saw kids have fun, all the way to adults put on the headset for the first time and be like, whoa, you know, this one kid like walked into the screen and we had to be like, oh, you got to stay in one spot. And then I played it, and I played this game where you're getting attacked by robots, and in the beginning there's like a news casting about how these robots have turned against people, And then all the robots around me looked at me with red eyes and then jumped at me, and the screen went black.
Oh my
And
God.
I'm like, for a filmmaker, I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
what did I just experience with motion picture and sound, you know?
Wow. I've
And
played
I
it
like,
too. I know. I've been in that. I put it on and I was just like in the room and I was like, this is confusing. This is
right?
really confusing.
Oh yeah. So I like have like a fictional a bookshelf in my mind, and I look at it like I wrote down on a sticky note this idea. And basically it starts out like virtual reality and something about using that virtual reality. And I put it up there as an idea. And then later I'll run into like for this one I watched an episode of gosh, what is it? I think it's Quantum Dreams or something like that on Prime Video.
Mm.
And it was that she was going into this VR thing and she was questioning what world was real. And at the end of it, I questioned a lot of things. And then I went to that. I was like, what is real? Like, what's happening right now? And then I was like, that's it. That little sticky note on my shelf in my mind of VR. Maybe I can take this sticky note and this sticky note and they go together. And then put it back on the shelf and see if more starts to collect for that idea over time. And then eventually, when I feel like I've thought through it enough, I got trained by Paul Schrader. I took his class at New York Film Academy to write screenplays, and he's a really grumpy man, honestly. But he was always very much like tell people. He was really big like when you'd come back to class, he'd say, "Who did you talk to about it? Who did you tell it to verbally?" And sometimes I'd have to sit there on my notebook like, I didn't, but I don't want to get in trouble this time. So then
So
I
I
realized
told
that
Mary and I told John. That's what
exactly
you have to do.
right,
Just go
pass
like,
the class, right? But then I started to realize that he was really harping on like, are you verbally workshopping this with people, or
ah,
not, or are you the only person you're bouncing this off of?
Yeah.
So really, over a couple of years, I talk with people about these stories, and they'll be like, "Well, that doesn't work," or "That's not." You find out what's interesting, not interesting. You'll find out whether or not your climactic moment, that other mountain, is impactful, or they're like, "So what? So what if you got the gold medal?" Or then you realize that going back to film school, one of my teachers used to say, "If you have an Act 3 problem, you have an Act 1 problem." So then if my ending was poor, I can go back to the beginning and be like, was it not set up right? Or does it really just suck? Should I should I rethink this? And they kind of like they work through that way. And so yeah, I've always had this idea of something will spark, even like when I was telling you guys before about watching that documentary Exit to the Gift Shop and how Banksy had this really it was wild. I watch it to this day and it's still so great. I can't tell if he's asking was it okay what the guy did by becoming a graffiti artist himself, but it was super commercial, almost like Hollywood, and he felt like he was the indie person. But the thing is, he never really gave you an answer whether that person artist should be recognized or whether his kind of artist should be recognized. And I like that he just didn't tell me. I had to like struggle with it really and internally. And so that got all the way to the point to where I was like, I really want to make this film about graffiti. And that was the sticky note that I stuck up on the shelf in my mind. And then when I saw the character, or really I saw a Time magazine cover that I'm very impacted by imagery. And it was
visual.
him with a hood on and a gold gas mask. And I kind of like, that's the character, like visually. So then I started to pair those ideas together. And that's kind of how it comes over time until I feel like it's workshopped enough that I'm like, I think that feasibly we can turn this idea into a film.
And that's the one that you're filming now or have, right?
You
This
know,
is the,
that was Rattlecan was the graffiti
that was
one, but
Rattlecan Griffin. But now you're yeah, what's the name of the
uh,
one that you're now filming again?
it's called Cyborg Recall.
Cyborg Recall. Thank you. Thank you so much. But you haven't finished filming it.
Nope, we've only filmed everything when they're in the VR game, basically.
Right. And then next year you will continue working on that. Yeah.
Yep,
So when
that's
is that
all the.
coming out? Do you have
I, I'd say my goal is to have everything packaged and gone to the distributor around fall next year.
fall next year? This has been amazing, Alexander.
Thank you.
You're so bubbly, and your mind is just like, you are obviously a storyteller. You're a born storyteller. I like that. Is not even a question. Just listening to you, so we're like, okay, wow. There's another story, and there's another story, and there's another story. It's beautiful, and it's very entertaining, I have to say. So beautiful, and all your work. I mean, wow. And I think that's what I learned today from you is go out there and do it.
Oh yeah.
Go out there and do it. And today it's
Oh
easy.
yeah.
I mean, you have the iPhone or you have your phone, it doesn't matter what brand you have.
Yes.
And
Yep.
just collect your people around you and start.
Yep.
And it's going to be horrendous, maybe the first ones.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
mean, I can't say that about Valeria, I have to say, because her first one was really nice. I liked it. I mean, I was in it, so that's maybe not so good for me to say, but I really loved what she wrote and the way she directed and everything. But yes, of course, you learn. You're learning by doing. I think
Oh
that's
yeah.
the thing. And you started very, very young. I mean,
Absolutely.
very young. So
Oh yeah. I mean,
You've
even
got a
now with
fascinating journey altogether. Like, it's
yes,
even difficult to wrap our heads around it.
it is.
I,
Honestly, yeah.
I mean, that's why I went to Adam and wanted to learn about what he's teaching in acting because I feel like if really now where I'm at is I have to bring these teams of people together
Mm.
and they all have their skill sets. And what Adam's teaching me right now is that I have to be able to speak to actors in a way that I understand and empathetic to and can help with them with their journey of the character. And if I'm someone who has the action figure and I care so much about what this character is and what they were going through and what they're going to go through, then I have to be able to turn my attention to that part of the team and say, what is this? What are these people going through? How are you going through it?
Mm.
How can I assist you understand or support you through that? And he's incredible at doing that. And
It's
that would be
really
the
good.
one, yeah, the one thing I'd say is go to these mentors especially while you're growing and going throughout your career and learn more. I often feel like I'll have to go to retail, and retail I feel like some managers get to the point to where they're like, I'm a store manager, I already get it. And it
Mm.
it kind of feels like they just got to a point of learning and I don't really want to learn anymore. And that to me always made me feel really sad because I'm like, no, with film, it's so multifaceted. There's no way I can know everything. Not,
No.
not not even in a lifetime.
Yeah.
So going to these different pieces of what storytelling is really at the end of the day and how it's changing. Now it could be a podcast, it could
Mm.
be a song, it could be an audiobook. There's so many different ways of getting stories to folks, to the people that you want to communicate to, that you have to go learn these things from everybody. And, to me, I always look at it like there's no way I know the most. You know, I can know a lot, but there's got to be somebody else out there. And I look at it like, I'm going to come to this person's learning and it's not going to be easy. They're probably going to tell me, I guess you're good enough to be a student, and then you're going to be like, I have to earn it. I have to earn this. I have to show, learning and why I get it and show it in practical application. And then, you put another tool on your tool belt to keep creating.
That
Um,
is that is the journey, and that is
yeah,
ambitiously intelligent. That's why we started this, is because we learn from
yeah,
you guys. We learn from those
that's
that
awesome.
come, those that we're interviewing. And I mean, from your journey, obviously, there's so much to learn.
And you
This
learn
has
by
been
doing
a
always
pleasure.
because especially in independent filmmaking, right? You can only learn by doing
Only
and by
so true.
observing people and learning from them.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's so true. Even at New York Film Academy, I loved directing for actors.
Mm-hmm.
There was this one director, and she was so good at getting everyone to be funny. And no lie, it was one of the only classes where I sat there and I didn't know how this person did what they did. I could
Oh,
watch just amazed, but they had this way of getting the team and everyone together to create this scenario. And the funny thing is later we went and had lunch and she sat down and said, "You're amazing at getting everyone to have this really dramatic experience together." And I'm like, that's weird that you're watching me because I'm watching you and trying to figure out how the world you do what you're doing. And you really start to learn that
Learn from
there's
each
no
other.
way, Yeah, there's no way you could know,
No.
what's gonna work. Yeah, it's crazy.
Thank you.
It's been amazing. Thank
This
you
has
so
been
much.
amazing. This has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. This is really cool. I'm so grateful to be a part of it, and I'm so glad you picked me.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for saying yes.
Of course.